This is the Ninja Foodie, and I've had it for quite some time now, and I use it mainly for air frying, but it does a whole bunch of other things. It even has a separate lid that you can use to pressure cook things with. But today I'm going to be making an entire meal out of it. This is the very first time, so I wasn't quite sure if it was going to actually work. I'm using a picanha because, well, first of all, it was really cheap because I got it from my brother for free. Shout out to Vu. But it's also got this really nice, thick fat cap on the one side. And one thing with the air fryer is that it needs some kind of fat. Without it, it just kind of dries out whatever you're cooking. So I'm gonna cut this into 4 really thick steaks. You could probably use something like maybe a ribeye or a really thick cut New York strip, as long as it has good marbling like this picanha does. Once you have your steak prepped, you want to cover it in a good amount of salt. You can see that I'm literally covering it in kosher salt. You don't want to use iodized table salt or that really thin sea salt. You want a nice coarse salt like kosher salt. After that, you want to cover it and stick it in the fridge and let it sit in there for at least 2, maybe 3 hours. I let mine go for about 6. That might have been a little bit too long, but that's okay. I just wasn't home. But you can see the steak kind of changed color. And what happens is the salt draws out a lot of the moisture. At the same time, it's sucking in some of that salt. This is a process that's called osmosis. Anyway, after you're done dry brining it, because I think that's what it's called, I like to rinse off the excess salt from the exterior of the steak. After a quick rinse, you're going to dry off your steaks. Make sure you dry it off really well, because this is going to help your steak develop that nice brown crust that we all love. Now normally when you cook picanha, you kind of fold it and then skewer it into almost like a C shape, but a skewer won't fit in the air fryer. So what I'm doing here is I'm just gonna tie it, and I highly suggest that anytime you cook like a big piece of steak like this, that you want to tie it up, because what you're doing is making everything nice and compact, and as it cooks it's gonna stay that way, and it's just gonna cook more evenly than if you just threw it in there. And there you are, 4 beautiful tied picanhas ready to go into my air fryer. And the beauty of this air fryer is that you can actually sear things in it. That's what's going to create that Maillard reaction you want, the browning of the steaks. You can't really do that by just air frying. While I'm waiting for the Ninja to warm up, I'm going to crack open a bottle of wine because I'm making a red wine braised mushroom, but also because wine goes really well with steaks. The secret to cooking fancy dinners on a weeknight like this is multitasking. So while I'm still waiting for the Ninja to heat up, I'm gonna go ahead and work on my mushrooms. We start by de-stemming them, and don't throw away the stems. They make really good stock. And once your Ninja has come up to temperature, you're gonna put in some oil and you're gonna start browning your steaks. Now the foodie does get pretty hot, so it doesn't take that long. I think I did it for about 2 minutes per side. I spent a little bit longer on the fat because I really wanted that fat to kind of render out. Now back to the mushrooms. I'm slicing the really big pieces. That's totally optional. And I could have actually doubled the amount of mushrooms. I only used 1 big pack. 2 packs would have been nice. I'm going to add in some onions, also optional. And then we're gonna mince up some garlic, about 3, 4, 5, however many cloves you want. And of course, you want a pat of butter, like a nice size chunk there. That's probably about a tablespoon. You can see that my steak's got a nice brown color on the outside. Not as good as you would have gotten on a grill, but I'm also not standing out in the cold, freezing my butt off. And after you've taken all your steaks out, in goes some olive oil, your pat of butter, your onions. You're gonna stir, let the onions cook for a little bit, and then you're gonna add in your garlic. You don't want to add the garlic in right away because you don't want it to burn. From here you want to scrape up the brown bits, all that fond from the steak. And then your mushrooms. Again, I think 2 large packs would have been better because you can see it barely covers the bottom, and mushrooms have a lot of water, and when they cook down, they virtually disappear. You want to season at every step. It adds a little bit more complexity, and for the mushrooms, it'll help draw out a lot of that moisture. Once your mushrooms start to sweat, then you know it's ready for the next step. You want to add your wine. This is magical right here. I love seeing this. It's probably my favorite part of cooking, when the wine hits whatever it is you're cooking and then that aroma just jumps up at you. Now once your wine has cooked down a tiny bit, you want to add in your herbs. I'm using thyme here. You can use whatever you want. I don't think you can use cilantro, so don't use whatever you want. Stick to the basics: sage, thyme, parsley, rosemary even. Now the Foodie Ninja comes with these accessories. This is the broiling rack, which you can put in 2 positions. I actually put it in the high position. You'll see that when I put it in this position, it didn't quite work because I couldn't close the lid. So I flipped it around and use it in a low position, and it works much better like that. It also comes with a crisping rack and another rack which I'm not entirely sure what it's used for, and I believe a rack which you can use to dry foods or dehydrate foods like beef jerky or dried fruits. So there's really a ton of different things you can do with this gadget. And here what I'm doing is I'm setting it to bake, which is another one of its many functions. And for this particular piece of steak, I'm doing 325. While the steaks and mushrooms are cooking, I'm gonna prep my veggie. I'm using a broccolini here. Pretty much anything would work. Brussels sprouts are really good in there. Maybe some carrots. I just really love broccolini, and I think it goes really, really well with steak, so that's what I'm using. Okay, back to the steaks. I didn't really know how long I should bake them for, so I set it for 15 minutes and checked it at 10. I did the poke test. If you have a digital thermometer, even better, but I've gotten pretty good at testing whether or not steak is done by just poking it. And voila, at about 15 minutes, it was done. And look at that, guys. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? But wait, we're not quite done yet. Don't forget about the broccolini. I'm gonna put that into my crisper basket, and that goes right into the pot with some olive oil, a little bit of salt, maybe some black pepper, some garlic if you want, whatever. Just use your imagination. We're gonna set it to crisp or air fry for about 15 minutes. Actually, I think I did about 10 minutes. And halfway through, you want to shake your basket. That's the key to air frying, is making sure you move the contents inside of it. And there we go. A complete Brazilian steakhouse meal in a little less than an hour. All done in the Foodie Ninja. Dinner for 4 for under $30. You're just gonna have to trust me how good it tasted, but just look at this steak. What other proof do you need? And the final verdict, you can do this without a Foodie Ninja, but the Ninja just makes all the other pieces of equipment that you might need to do it. It just gets rid of all that. You don't need to go fire up a grill. You don't need another, like a skillet to brown your meat on. You don't need to start your oven. You can do everything in the Ninja itself. It's just way more convenient, and you know what? You only have 1 pot to wash. That's totally worth it in my opinion. Oh, one last thing. I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't put any black pepper at all during the cooking process. I like to use my black pepper at the very end, and what I do is I keep a little container of roasted black pepper that I grind up in my mortar and pestle, and then I use it as like a topping. It just tastes so much better like that. You get more of the pepper flavor, and for a steak like this, you want as much of the pepper flavor in there because it just really enhances the flavor of the meat itself. Just do it, trust me on this. Really good steak, girls.
I'm waiting for you to serve me.
Oh yeah.
You don't get your food at restaurants. The waiter serves you.
That's true, they come by and
party. Perfect.